Welcome to Shooting Straight with A1F.com. I'm Frank Miniter, the editor-in-chief. The NRA is America's first freedom. Today we have the incredible pleasure of speaking with Montana Attorney General Austin Knudsen. Austin, I've wanted to speak with you for a while because you led 17 other states, so 18 states in total, including the state of Montana, into writing an amicus brief to the U.S. Supreme Court, arguing that the court should take NRA v. Volo, the First Amendment case against the state of New York, where the state of New York has suppressed and gone after the NRA's right to speak. And you characterize it this way at the beginning of your amicus brief. Mary Volo, head of New York's Department of Financial Services, a state agency tasked with sweeping regulatory authority over financial institutions. And I might add that this isn't just the state of New York when you look at this, because most financial institutions are located in New York City, or at least have an office there. So she oversees just about everything in the United States. Leveraged her official authority to stifle the NRA's constitutionally protected political speech. Such an important thing. Before we jump into that, I'd like to ask you something else, because there's something here I find just incredible. That here you are, a high-ranking state official, attorney general, looking at this and saying, I should not have this power. And other attorney generals for the states, other state officials should not have the power to silence their adversaries. We have a First Amendment for a reason. Is that the way you see it?
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe it is a little axiomatic to somebody like me from Montana, but government should not be able to come in and act like the mafia. And that's really what this was. I mean, you had Maria Volo come in and act like a mobster and basically threaten companies for doing business with the NRA. And it wasn't overt, right? And that actually was found in the district court filing that, she never made any direct threats, but it was like a Tony Soprano situation. Boy, that's a nice business you have there. Be an awful shame if anything were to happen to it. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And that's how she operated. No state official, no government official should have that power to threaten someone just based on their association. That's clearly a violation of the First Amendment.
Well, she did that. She's a former state official, but she did that. Former governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, had argued at the time, took credit for directing Volo to use her position to attack the NRA by saying that those doing business with the NRA would risk of losing more than just their, this is in quotes, reputation. So that was right from the governor of New York to his state official and his regulatory body overseeing these institutions that then stopped doing business with the NRA. So they were stopping the association between individuals, between the association, the NRA, and financial institutions. They were breaking those relationships on purpose with real threats.
There is a long case precedent history here obviously this isn't the first time this has been tried, right? I mean, in the history of American politics, there's certainly been instances of government officials abusing their positions of power and trying to silence either their critics or their political opponents, or in this case, groups they don't like. And that's why we thought this was so important to bring this up to the U.S. Supreme Court. That's why I'm absolutely thrilled the U.S. Supreme Court granted our cert petition here, because there are so many of these cases in our nation's precedent of where this has been struck down, and that's why this case was so important. I'm just absolutely tickled that the Supreme Court granted cert and agreed to take this case up, because I think this is a really, really important issue, and we need them to rule on it.
This is a basic First Amendment case. If the government institution can destroy a large association like the NRA with millions of members, take away their right to free speech, then what else can they destroy? Any political adversary they have. And then where does America go from there? It doesn't look like America to me for very long, which surprised me. Well, should have surprised anyone who loves their freedom, because in 2022, and this is what led to the Supreme Court case, U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit attempted to make this vital First Amendment case go away by ruling that in an era, and this is in quotes, of enhanced corporate social responsibility, it is permissible for state officials to use their regulatory power to single out the harm those agencies who they might disagree with. They said it was fine because it was their regulatory authority and no big deal. They could just do it.
Yeah, that's an incredibly dangerous statement that came out of the Second Circuit. I mean, and you can see why we were so concerned about that, and why so many of me and my colleagues jumped on this amicus brief on behalf of the NRA. That's incredibly dangerous language that fits right in with the left's entire narrative of, environmental social governance, ESG. And we're seeing so much that across the corporate specter right now, where you have the left that is unable to pass their radical agenda through the Congress, whether it's gun control, whether it's, diversity, equity, and inclusion, ESG measures. I mean, whatever the case may be, they can't get it passed through the Congress. So what are they doing? They're turning to corporate America. They're turning to left-leaning big tech corporations, the financial institutions, the insurance institutions, and they're trying to pressure them this way. And when you've got a Second Circuit Court of Appeal step in and say, well, yeah, given the culture today, that's okay to do because of this notion of enhanced corporate responsibility. That's pretty terrifying language. There's nothing about that in the Constitution. That is not an originalist, textualist reading at all, and that's just really dangerous stuff. Not to mention that there's just no precedent for it. I mean, the Second Circuit just flat got it wrong. This is not activity that government gets to engage in. They don't get to bully. They don't get to Gestapo. They don't get to use mob tactics to threaten companies. That's a pretty flagrant violation of the First Amendment, freedom of association.
Or in this case, a major civil liberties association, millions of members. There have been real
Absolutely.
consequences to this. You look at the NRA's note of this, because as a result of these actions from officials in the state of New York, the NRA was dropped by its longtime corporate insurance carrier. And seeking to obtain replacement coverage, the NRA has spoken to numerous carriers, and nearly every carrier has indicated that it fears transacting with the NRA specifically because of the state's actions. So right there, they've severed the NRA's relationships in a blatant attempt to try to make the NRA go away, go bankrupt, to harm the NRA. And that was explicitly said by then Governor Andrew Cuomo. That was their intention, taking away that First Amendment right, harm this association. How hard was it to get 17 attorney generals to step up behind you and step up with you into this amicus brief?
It wasn't hard. There were a handful that didn't, but getting the number that we got was not difficult. This is the right argument to make. It was the right situation. You've got a lot of Republican state attorneys general who are passionate about the Second Amendment. They're passionate about groups like the NRA, and getting 17 others was not difficult.
This is a major freedom issue. Even the ACLU has put an amicus brief behind this case, arguing that government can't be allowed to just go after those it might not like in order to destroy them. I hunted a lot in Montana, and I love the state. I fished a lot in Montana too. I can't imagine that happening in Montana.
No, the people of Montana wouldn't stand for it. It's certainly not something that I would, a power that I would use. But I think the people of Montana would rightly rise up. I would not be looking at reelection, or I don't think anybody in our state government would. This is not behavior that's tolerated. That's not just a Western thing. That's not just a Montana thing. I think that's an American thing. There's boxes that the government fits in, and things they get to do. And I mean, I've said it before, acting like the mafia in this case is not something the government should be doing.
Well, the Bill of Rights is always whatever party you were from, look historically in the United States, had brought us together. We had those shared values. That especially starts with the First Amendment, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, association, and so on. So I'm hopeful looking at this case and looking at the Supreme Court we have, and I'm not going to predict where the Supreme Court's going to go, but it just makes me hopeful seeing these amicus briefs from your state and so many others, that this is going to help bring us back together. Taking away the First Amendment rights, such a critical case of an association like the NRA, that just can't be accepted.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I'm so glad to lead this one. I mean, look, I'm an NRA member. I have been since I've been legal. That this is an important one, but not just for the NRA. Like you pointed out, there are other civil rights groups out there in this country. And what happens, regardless of what political party is in power and who's in the executive of whatever state, they should not have the power to come in and threaten, whether overtly or covertly, threaten someone based upon their associations, or threaten a company or business based upon them doing business with an organization like the NRA. That's just completely anathema to our Constitution. I mean, that's why this was such an easy join for us. That's why this was an easy one for us to lead, and I'm thrilled to have done it. So as you say, you never want to pre-guess what the U.S. Supreme Court's going to do, but the fact they took this case up, I think, is encouraging. Obviously, the makeup of the U.S. Supreme Court right now is encouraging. We're really looking forward to this one, and we're cautiously optimistic for a good result.
Well, so what do you see going forward? I mean, not just on this battle.
Well, it's a concerning time right now. I mean, to be a Second Amendment advocate, and look, I'm a gun guy. I'm a shooter. I'm a reloader. I'm a hunter. I'm a competitive shooter, collector. Go down the list. I spend a lot of time around the gun shops in Montana and around the gun industry. I'm seeing this stuff even in Montana, where you're having gun shops, manufacturers, go down the list, anything related to the Second Amendment, even in a pro-gun state like Montana, they're getting their casualty insurance canceled. They're having access to credit denied. They're having access to credit processing, debit card processing, credit card processing denied, not because they're bad businesses. In fact, we've been able to show that a lot of these businesses are successful. They're thriving. They're a good credit, risk for a lending institution. These are solid businesses, but it's because of the fact that they're engaged in the Second Amendment one way or the other, whether it's selling guns or making guns or parts or whatever, that they're just being denied. And this is a bigger push, as I said, into the ESG world, the notion of environmental and social governance. And this is something that Republican attorneys general have really been diving into in the last 2 or 3 years. That's a term that we really weren't seeing a lot of a couple of years ago. And it's become a bigger and bigger concern of ours because, as I said, you're seeing so many of these left-wing organizations and left-wing groups, knowing they can't get their agenda passed through the Congress, that they're turning to private business and they're trying to pressure it through the boardroom rather than through the halls of Congress where this garbage should be. So that's where I see the trend going. I don't think that's going to change. As long as Joe Biden is in the White House, I think we're going to keep seeing more and more of this stuff. The Second Amendment is a hot political football in a couple of these big Senate races coming up. I don't think even Chuck Schumer wants to touch those issues. So I think we're going to keep seeing more and more of this on the corporate front. And it's very concerning to me because, like I said, I'm seeing this even here in Montana.
I find it a strange culture war in that respect, and that there's well over 100 million gun owners in this country, and so many more millions have bought guns since 2020 and the troubles that occurred at that time. And a lot of, they're not all Republicans. A huge swath of them are Democrats, independents. This is hardly just a one-party thing. This just should not be a partisan issue. It wasn't historically. It shouldn't be now. Gun ownership sure doesn't reflect that. It just makes me wonder as we go forward into this next presidential election, and Biden has come down very clear on where he wants to be. He wants to confiscate firearms. He wants another ban on so-called assault weapons. And so he's got a whole list of things that he wants to do. But culturally, where does that bring us nationally as we head into this election? It's fascinating and it's troublesome and it's just an important time. So I can't say how much I appreciate a state like you gathering other states together behind this important amicus brief, the NRA, and this just critical First Amendment case.
Look, this is a fun one for me. I mean, candidly, like I said, I'm an NRA member. I have been for my entire legal life. But like I said, I'm a gun guy, and the Second Amendment is one I watch like a hawk. I'm happy to be kind of the leading state attorney general when it comes to Second Amendment issues. I'm very involved in the industry. I'm friends with a lot of people in the industry. I've been going to a lot of these conventions, and I keep a close eye on this. So I'm happy to be a leader here. This is an easy one for me. And it's one that I'm going to keep up on. I mean, as long as Austin Knudsen is the Attorney General in Montana, we're going to keep being a leader on the Second Amendment and watching these organizations and these groups like hawks. and watching the Biden administration like hawks. I mean, we were very critical of his ATF, of his nominations that he's made to lead the ATF, of a lot of the rules that have come out of the ATF. We've been the lead on the bump stock ban, on the pistol brace ban, the 80% lower ban. Go down the list. We're the lead state on almost all of those briefs, and so I mean this was just a no brainer for me. It's a fun one, and it's one that means a lot to me.
Well, I hope it's a no-brainer for the Supreme Court. It really should be. It's a very clear case. Thank you, Austin.
You bet. Happy to do it.